Have you ever sat quietly, maybe in the corner of a family gathering, and noticed how the room seems to move around you? While you stay still, people laughing, talking, rushing past, and yet no one really sees you. You smile, you nod, you say a gentle hello, but your words feel like they disappear before they even land. It's not always obvious, is it? This feeling of being ignored doesn't come all at once. It starts in small ways. Maybe someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Maybe they say they'll call and don't. Maybe your suggestions are met with polite silence. Or your needs are dismissed with a casual, "Oh, you'll be fine." And little by little you begin to shrink. Not physically, but in presence, in visibility. Like a photograph that slowly fades in the sunlight until only faint outlines remain. You start to ask yourself, when did I stop mattering? When did my voice become background noise? And the most painful part, sometimes it's not strangers doing it. Sometimes it's the people you love most. Your own children, your grandchildren, people you held when they were small, people you sacrificed for protected, guided. Now they walk past you like you're just there. It's one of the most deeply wounding experiences a person can go through. And after 60, it happens to far too many, quietly, invisibly. And most don't talk about it. Because how do you say it out loud? I feel forgotten. I feel like I'm chasing scraps of attention. But here's what I want to say to you right now: you don't have to chase. Not affection, not respect, not even acknowledgement. Because what you're seeking from others begins with something far more powerful: the way you hold yourself. I want to share a story. There's a woman named Nora. She's 68. Graceful, soft-spoken kind. She told me that after her retirement, everything shifted. Her phone stopped ringing as much. Her daughter would drop by only when she needed help. Friends slowly became acquaintances. It felt like I had vanished, she said. So she started trying harder, saying yes to everything, buying gifts for others just because, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, offering to babysit even when she was tired. But no matter how much she gave, it felt like she got less and less in return. And that's when it hit her: she was chasing approval, chasing presence, chasing proof that she still mattered. But here's the truth she came to learn, and maybe it's one you need to hear too. The more you chase, the more they pull away. Because chasing changes your energy. It tells people, even unconsciously, that your worth is up for negotiation. That you'll bend, adjust, soften yourself just to be seen. And people, especially those closest to us, respond not just to what we say, but to how we carry ourselves. So Nora did something radical. Quiet, but radical. She stopped chasing. She stopped calling people who never called back. She stopped over-apologizing. She stopped saying yes when her heart said no. And instead, she began turning inward. Not in sadness, but in strength. She signed up for a watercolor class, something she'd always wanted to try, but never made time for. She started walking in the early mornings, headphones in, listening to music that made her feel alive again. She wore colors that made her feel radiant. She lit candles at night, not for anyone else, but because she liked the soft glow. She started having coffee by the window and wrote in a little journal, not of what others were doing, but of what she noticed, what she felt, what she remembered. And the most interesting thing, people began to notice, not because she demanded attention, not because she guilted them, but because something in her energy had shifted. She wasn't leaning in, hoping to be seen. She was standing tall, already full. Her daughter, who used to breeze in and out, suddenly lingered longer. Her neighbor, who rarely said more than hello, stopped and said, "You seem different lately, happier." But here's the thing. Nora wasn't doing any of this for them. She wasn't putting on a show. She had simply remembered who she was before the world made her feel invisible. and that remembering gave her back her dignity. This isn't about becoming cold. It's not about building walls or teaching them a lesson. It's about returning to your own center, holding your head a little higher, not out of pride, but out of peace. It's about choosing to live in a way that feeds your own spirit, rather than trying to feed everyone else's while starving yourself. And maybe you're sitting there right now wondering, how do I begin? How do I stop chasing when the loneliness feels so real? You start small. You start with one moment of truth each day. One choice that's yours alone. One gentle boundary. One deep breath that says, I am still here. And I will not shrink myself for anyone else's comfort anymore. You start by remembering that you do not need to earn space. You already belong. And every time you choose your peace over people-pleasing, every time you say, I deserve more than this half-hearted attention, every time you show up for yourself with the love you keep waiting for from others, you begin to change not into someone else, but back into someone whole. There's something deeply familiar about trying to keep the peace, isn't there? Many of us were raised in a time when quiet endurance was praised. We were taught to be polite, to serve, to smile even when we were tired, to not ruffle feathers, especially within the family. We poured ourselves out into meals, into holidays, into listening and helping and always being there. And somewhere along the way, many of us began to believe that our worth came from being useful, that if we stopped giving, we'd stop mattering. So we kept giving, even when it drained us, even when we started to feel like a shadow in our own home. Take Helen, for example. She's 72, a mother of 3, fiercely loving, endlessly giving. She would show up with soup when someone was sick, drive her grandchildren to lessons, host every birthday and holiday without being asked. But over time, something changed. Her children stopped saying thank you, stopped asking how she was doing. They began treating her more like a convenience than a person. And still, she kept going. She thought, if I just keep showing up, maybe they'll see me again. Until one evening, after cleaning up yet another family dinner, while everyone scrolled on their phones or talked over her, she sat alone in the kitchen, and something broke open inside her. A quiet ache. A tired voice whispering, is this love or is this just habit? She realized she'd been trying to buy respect with service, trading self-sacrifice for inclusion. And that night, she didn't shout. She didn't make a speech. She simply made a promise to herself. No more giving from an empty well. Helen started doing something small but powerful. She began checking in with herself before she said yes. Do I want to? Is this kind to me? Would I do this if no one praised me for it? And sometimes the answer was no. So she began saying it, kindly, calmly, without guilt. And here's what happened. At first, there was confusion, some resistance. Her children didn't quite know how to react. They were so used to her saying yes, always smiling. But over time, they adjusted. The invitations became more respectful. The requests came with more awareness. And most importantly, Helen stopped feeling like she had to prove her place. Because when you respect yourself out loud, others begin to hear it even without words. This doesn't mean everyone will change. Sometimes people will keep ignoring you, but you won't be ignoring yourself anymore. And that shift, that's everything. Frank, a retired mechanic, shared something with me that stayed in my heart. He said, I used to think if I didn't go to every family gathering, they'd stop inviting me. Then I realized, if the only way they'll include me is if I exhaust myself, maybe I'm not being included at all. So he started choosing differently. He didn't disappear, but he stopped attending out of fear. He started saying, I'll come if I'm feeling rested. And when he went, he stayed as long as it felt good, not 1 minute longer. What happened next surprised him. His family began checking in more, asking how he felt, respecting when he said no. Not because he forced them to, but because his energy was different. grounded, peaceful, present. You see, chasing makes people feel like they have control over your belonging, like it's something they can give or take. But when you stand in your own presence, your no becomes just as powerful as your yes. Your time becomes precious again, and people start to notice the difference. Let me be clear, this isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming centered. When you've spent a lifetime being everything for everyone, turning toward yourself can feel unnatural, even wrong. But it's not wrong to say my needs matter too. It's not wrong to be quiet and observant rather than constantly available. You've spent decades pouring love into others. Now it's time to pour some back into yourself, not because you're done giving, but because you finally understand that your well needs refilling too. And the moment you stop begging to be seen, the moment you begin treating yourself as someone worthy of gentleness, of rest, of choice, the world shifts. Because you are no longer trying to fit into spaces that don't value you. You're creating your own space, and in that space, your dignity blooms again. There's no need to fight for attention. No need to beg to be understood. You can simply be grounded, calm, clear, with or without their applause. And when they come back, and often you'll welcome them, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of deep, steady self-respect, because that's what they'll feel in your presence. Not neediness, not resentment, but quiet strength. There's something remarkable that happens when you stop trying to force your presence into someone else's world and instead begin to live fully in your own. At first it feels foreign, maybe even lonely. When you've built your identity around being needed, being liked, being involved, it can feel like a quiet ache to step back, to no longer be the first to reach out, to offer, to remind. You might wonder if the silence means you've truly been forgotten, but slowly, something softer begins to take root. Peace. Not because everything outside of you changes, but because what's inside of you finally starts to breathe. You begin to notice the sound of your own voice again, not the version that carefully filters her words to please others, but the truer one. The one that knows what she loves, what she misses, what she dreams about still. You find yourself lingering over your morning coffee a little longer, no longer rushing to prepare for someone else's schedule. You walk your own pace. You read the books that interest you. You move your body because it feels good, not because someone told you it would make you better. And something beautiful happens when you live like this, without needing to prove your worth or audition for belonging. People feel it. Your adult children may not say it out loud, but they sense a shift. The version of you who once chased them with reminders, who bent to accommodate their every whim, is now someone steady and whole, someone who holds her own. It's not defiance, it's not punishment, it's presence. They begin to call a bit more, perhaps not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. Because you're no longer predictable in your need, you've become magnetic in your peace. I spoke to a man named Gerald, a retired school principal. After years of always being on call for his grown children, he realized he was more of a fallback than a father figure. They came when they needed help, not when they wanted him. So he stopped overextending. He didn't vanish, but he let his time become precious again. He started volunteering at a community garden where his hands got dirty and his mind stayed light. He reconnected with an old friend, and they started meeting weekly for chess. He wrote letters not because anyone asked, but because he had things to say. His children noticed, not right away. But eventually the tone changed. One of his daughters said, "You seem different lately, Dad. Happier." He smiled and said simply, "I'm finally giving myself what I used to wait for from others." That's the shift. It's not about controlling how others treat you. It's about refusing to treat yourself as optional. And when that shift becomes real, when your energy begins to flow inward, not outward, in search of approval, people take notice. Not because you demand their respect, but because you carry it within you. Respect becomes less about what they give and more about what you embody. You may not be the center of attention at the next family gathering. That's okay. But when you speak, your words will carry a calm confidence. When you smile, it will be from joy, not from hope that someone will smile back. You'll listen without grasping. You'll give without depletion. And you'll know deeply that you don't need to chase what's already within you. You are no longer trying to earn space at someone else's table. You've built your own, and you're sitting there now, whole, complete, and wonderfully enough. Even if your phone is quiet some days, your soul won't be. Even if the house is still, your spirit will be moving. Because you're no longer defined by how others see you. You're defined by how you see yourself. And when that changes, everything else begins to find a new rhythm. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to stay small to stay included. You only need to stand softly, clearly, lovingly in your own light, and trust that those who truly care will feel its warmth. And those who don't, you will no longer shrink trying to convince them. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful thing you can ever say without words, without demand, is this: I love myself too much to beg to be seen. And when you live that truth, the world responds differently. Not because you asked it to, but because you've changed the conversation entirely. Thank you, truly from the bottom of my heart, for sitting with me through this conversation. It's not easy, is it? To talk about being overlooked. To admit that at this stage in life, after all the love you've given, all the years you've spent showing up for others, you now find yourself sitting in a kind of silence. A silence you never expected. But you stayed. You listened. You reflected. And that tells me something powerful about you. You haven't given up. You're still reaching not outward for approval, but inward for truth. And that is one of the bravest things a person can do. Maybe as you listened, you felt your chest tighten. Maybe some memories rose up of birthdays, forgotten, of phone calls that never came, of moments where your kindness went unnoticed. Maybe you thought of all the times you tried just a little harder, hoping they'd see you again. But what I hope you take with you now is this: your value has never been tied to their response. You are not invisible. You are not a burden. You are not less because someone else is distracted, distant, or unkind. You are still whole, still luminous, still worthy of joy, of love, of peace. And the beauty is, those things don't have to come from others first. They can begin with you. When you choose stillness over chasing. When you choose truth over performance. When you choose to stay rooted in who you are, instead of bending for who they want you to be. That's where the healing begins. And no, it won't always look dramatic. No fireworks. No instant apologies from those who overlooked you. But you'll feel it quietly. In the way you stop second-guessing yourself. In the way you smile not for their approval, but from your own contentment. In the way you wake up one morning and realize you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. I believe in that version of you. And if this message touched something in you, if it made you feel seen even just a little, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me your story. Have you felt this shift too? Have you walked through the loneliness, the longing, and found your way back to yourself? You're not alone. There are thousands of others just like you walking this quiet path of reclamation. Reclaiming dignity, reclaiming joy, reclaiming the simple, sacred right to live on their own terms. Let's build that community together. One story, one moment, one honest truth at a time. And if you'd like to keep walking with me, if you want more messages like this, more conversations that honor the complexity and the beauty of life after 60, please click subscribe. Not because I need the number, but because I'd truly love to stay connected with you. To remind you week after week that you still matter. That your presence still holds weight. that your story still has chapters left to write. You've given so much to others. Now let this be your season to receive, to be nourished, to be seen, to be at peace with yourself. You don't have to chase anyone to belong. You already do, and I'm so glad you're here. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. You're worth it, always.